Welcome to Voice of Stories. Discover tales that inspire, captivate, and bring words to life. Subscribe for unforgettable stories.
A decade of change. 10 years ago, my wife walked out on me and our 5 kids, leaving us in chaos. Suddenly, I was thrust into the overwhelming task of raising them alone. The nights were long, the doubts deep, but through it all, I persevered. Every year that passed, our bond grew stronger and our resilience built deeper roots. Yet, nothing could have prepared me for the storm that would hit us a decade later. The morning routine. It was 5 a.m. when my alarm buzzed, pulling me from sleep. Groggy, I turned it off and got out of bed, making my way to the kitchen. Mornings had become my sanctuary, a brief, peaceful moment before the chaos of the day began. As I cracked eggs into a pan, the sizzle filled the quiet morning air. The coffee pot gurgled, releasing a comforting aroma. It was a routine that grounded me, a ritual that held us together. As I flipped pancakes, I couldn't help but reflect on how my life had changed. Raising 5 kids alone was never part of the plan, but it was my reality now. Each smile at the breakfast table, each laugh that filled our home, made the sleepless nights worth it. It was a stark contrast to the silence that followed their mother's departure. Though the journey had been difficult, it was one I wouldn't trade for anything. A day in the life. Dad, I can't find my homework. My youngest called from the hallway, his voice light with a hint of mischief. With a smile, I handed over a forgotten lunchbox to another kid. "All right, everyone, let's get moving," I called, orchestrating the morning's chaos. Shoes were tied, jackets zipped, and backpacks adjusted in a hurry. In the blink of an eye, we were all packed into the minivan. The whirlwind of the morning may have been frantic, but I cherished it. Once the kids were safely at school, I headed to my job at the local construction company. The hum of machinery greeted me as I arrived, my steel-toed boots crunching against the gravel. My supervisor, Jim, waved as I set up for the day. Despite the physical toll, I found solace here. It gave me a chance to focus on something other than the constant balancing act at home. Pete, a colleague, often admired my resilience. "I don't know how you do it," he said one lunch break. 5 kids and still showing up with a smile. I just shrugged with a modest grin. They didn't know the half of it: late-night homework help, parent-teacher conferences, the juggling of dinner and bedtime. But I carried on, driven by the love I had for my kids and my desire to give them the best future I could. An unexpected letter. On my way home from work one evening, I found a letter in the mail. It was addressed in familiar handwriting. My heart sank. What could my ex-wife possibly want after all these years? The letter felt heavy in my hands, and as I walked inside, my mind was flooded with questions. The next morning at work, Jim surprised me with some news. "Gareth, can I see you in my office?" he asked. "We've been really impressed with your dedication. We'd like to offer you a promotion." I was stunned. The offer brought with it more responsibility, longer hours, and a higher salary. It was a chance for a brighter future for my family, but it also meant even more time away from them. I found myself torn between providing for my family and maintaining the balance I'd worked so hard to create. Weighing the choices. On my drive home, I pondered the decision. Could I manage the promotion alongside the emotional storm brought on by the letter from my ex-wife? I parked the car, feeling the weight of both choices pressing on me. Later that evening, I spoke with my eldest child, who had essentially become a second parent since their mother left. "I got offered a promotion today," I began, watching their eyes widen. "It means more money, but it also means longer hours." My eldest gave a half smile, a mixture of pride and concern. "We'll manage, Dad," they said. In that moment, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. We shared a silent understanding. Each of us had grown in ways I never expected, but we'd always have each other. The letter's impact. That night, I finally opened the letter. My hands trembled as I read the words. She wanted to reconnect with the family she had abandoned, and she spoke of the changes she had made in her life. She was asking for another chance, and at the end of the letter there was a plea for forgiveness. My mind raced. Memories of our time together flashed before me, but they were intertwined with the pain of her sudden departure. Could I trust her intentions? Could I ever forgive her? I needed time to process. Preparing for the conversation. I knew I couldn't keep the letter a secret from my kids. They were already noticing changes. My eldest was distant. The younger ones began asking questions about their mother. "Do you think Mom ever misses us?" my middle child asked one evening, catching me off guard. The weight of the question lingered in the air, making it clear that I needed to address the situation soon. I couldn't delay the conversation any longer. My children deserved the truth, and I needed to give it to them. The conversation over dinner one evening, I gathered my children around the table. I knew the conversation would be difficult, but it was necessary. With a deep breath, I began. "Kids, there's something important I need to tell you." I read the letter aloud, watching their expressions change from confusion to shock. The room went silent as I finished. The kids' reactions were a mix of anger, confusion, and indifference. My eldest clenched their fists in frustration. "Why now, after all these years?" they demanded. The younger ones, though, seemed more curious, asking questions like, "Does she really want to come back?" I reassured them that nothing would happen without their input. "We'll take this one step at a time," I said, trying to offer comfort. "Your feelings matter more than anything. We'll face this as a family." Balancing work and family. Despite my efforts to balance everything, the strain was beginning to show. The responsibilities of my promotion were demanding, and I found myself working longer hours. At the same time, my connection with the kids was slipping. I was spread thinner every day. Jim, my boss, noticed the change in me and pulled me aside. "Gareth, is everything okay?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "It's been tough at home," I admitted. Jim listened intently, offering a supportive ear. "If you need any flexibility, don't hesitate to ask," he said. His words were a relief, and I left that meeting with a renewed sense of perspective. I realized that while work was important, family came first, and I needed to be there for them no matter what. A decade ago, my wife walked out on me and our 5 children, leaving our lives in turmoil. Suddenly, I was faced with the overwhelming task of raising 5 kids on my own. Through the tears and doubts, I persevered. Each passing year only strengthened our bond, and together, we learned resilience. But nothing could have prepared me for what would come 10 years later, when she found out how far I had come. Her reaction was nothing short of shock. My alarm buzzed at 5 a.m., and I groggily turned it off. I rolled out of bed, tiptoeing to the kitchen. Quiet mornings had become my sanctuary, a brief moment of peace before the chaos of the day began. As I cracked eggs into the pan, their sizzle greeted the dawn and the coffee pot gurgled, filling the room with a comforting aroma. This routine had become my anchor, a ritual that kept our family stitched together. While I flipped pancakes, I reflected on my chaotic, yet fulfilling life. Raising 5 children alone was never part of the plan, but it had become my reality. Each smile at the breakfast table made the sleepless nights worth it. Their laughter filled our home, a stark contrast to the silence that followed their mother's departure. It had been a tough journey, but one I wouldn't trade for anything. "Dad, I can't find my homework," my youngest shouted from the hallway. With a chuckle, I handed over a forgotten lunchbox to another child. "All right, everyone, let's get moving," I commanded, orchestrating the morning's organized chaos. Shoes were tied, jackets zipped, and backpack straps adjusted. Moments later, we piled into the minivan, and I juggled a mix of breakfast dishes and last-minute school forms. Mornings were a whirlwind, but I cherished them. Once the kids were safely dropped off at school, I headed to my job at the local construction company. The hum of machinery greeted me as I walked onto the site, my steel-toed boots crunching gravel underfoot. I waved to Jim, my supervisor, and began setting up for the day. Despite the physical toll, I found solace here. It was a break from the worries of home, even if only for a few hours. "You're doing great, man," Pete remarked during a lunch break. "5 kids and you're still showing up here with a smile?" I shrugged, a modest grin on my face. They didn't know the half of it. The late-night homework help, the parent-teacher conferences, the juggling act of dinner and bedtime. But I carried on, motivated by the love I had for my children and their future. On my way home from work, I flipped through the day's mail, absent-mindedly sorting through the letters. Then, one envelope caught my eye, addressed in familiar handwriting. It felt like a punch to the gut. I froze. Memories of my wife's departure rushed back. What could she possibly want after all these years? The envelope felt heavy in my hand as I walked into the house, my mind swirling with questions and unresolved emotions. The next morning, I received surprising news at work. "Gareth, can I see you in my office?" Jim asked. "We've been really impressed with your dedication and hard work," Jim began. "We'd like to offer you a promotion." Stunned, I nodded, trying to process the words. With the promotion came increased responsibility and longer hours, but the extra income promised a brighter future for my family. It would be a big decision. The increased responsibilities would mean more time away from my children, time I had already sacrificed so much of. Torn between personal sacrifice and professional advancement, I felt the weight of the decision settle over me. It was a bittersweet opportunity, and I knew it required careful thought. Driving home, I thought about the sacrifices I'd made for my kids, the missed social gatherings, the sleepless nights, and the relentless pace of single parenthood. It had become my norm. But the thought of the promotion, coupled with the unexpected letter from my estranged wife, left me with even more to consider. That evening, I sat down with my eldest child, who had been acting as a second parent since their mother left. "I got offered a promotion today," I began. "It means more money, but it also means longer hours." My eldest smiled, a mix of pride and concern in their eyes. "We'll manage, Dad," they said. Their words, simple yet profound, carried the weight only someone who had matured too quickly could understand. We shared a rare moment of acknowledgement, a quiet gratitude for what we had built together. "Thank you for everything," I said, meeting their eyes. I hadn't opened the letter yet, but I knew I would have to soon. The next morning, I finally decided to open it. With trembling hands, I tore it open. The familiar handwriting seemed to leap off the page. Her words pleaded for forgiveness and expressed a desire to reconnect with the family she had abandoned all those years ago. She mentioned going through significant changes in her life and wanting another chance. My heart pounded as I read, anger and confusion mixing in my chest. What could she possibly want now? I set the letter down and rubbed my temples, knowing I needed time to process this. I couldn't respond immediately. I had to consider what this meant for my children. Could I trust her intentions? I knew I needed to talk to my kids. The letter was a bombshell, and it was only fair they knew about it, even if it was painful. As I walked into the kitchen, I caught my eldest's eye, sensing they knew something was off. "We need to talk," I said, trying to muster the strength for what was to come. At dinner, I shared the contents of the letter with them. The room grew quiet as I read aloud. Their faces shifted from confusion to shock. Their reactions were a mix of curiosity, anger, and indifference. My eldest clenched their fists, struggling to contain their frustration. "Why now? After all these years?" they demanded. The younger kids, still hopeful, asked simple questions. "Does she really want to come back?" Their questions added another layer of uncertainty. "We'll take this one step at a time," I said, meeting their eyes. "Your feelings matter, and we'll consider them above everything else." The tension in the room eased slightly, though uncertainty lingered. I promised to navigate this together, as a family. We were a team. As the days went on, the strain of my new responsibilities at work, coupled with the emotional storm at home, began to weigh heavily on me. My boss, Jim, noticed my distraction and called me in for a one-on-one meeting. "Gareth, is everything okay?" he asked with concern. I sighed and opened up about everything: the letter, the emotional toll, and the pressure of balancing work and family. Jim listened intently, offering a supportive ear. "If you need any flexibility, don't hesitate to ask," he said. "We're here to support you." His support gave me a renewed perspective on handling my responsibilities. I decided to seek legal counsel to understand my options regarding my wife's potential return. I wanted to be prepared, ensuring my family's well-being remained protected. Meanwhile, my children began researching their mother's life over the past decade. Equipped with the internet and an insatiable curiosity, they unearthed surprising details. "Dad, we found some stuff about Mom," my eldest said, showing me their findings. It painted a complex picture of their mother's life, a life filled with struggles and instability.